So I had somebody ask me about how to build a Plume Monarch, and this is the current build that I run. So basically what you want is crit rate in almost all your gear. Okay, and I say almost because you're going to want at least 4 pieces, I think, of combo. I mean, it helps to have at least 2 to 3 pieces at the very minimum, but I think 4 is probably plenty. Because what you'll do is you'll wind up having a pretty even combo and crit rate. And if you're doing it right, you'll also try and get eternal, as you're progressively building your gear. So whenever you're wanting to do this, like the way I would go about this is go crit rate any and combo any, and just search basically supreme and above, build your supreme set. Then once you've got your supreme done, Aurus up, and then once you've got Aurus up, then eternal, and eventually you'll get a fairly decent set. Obviously, if you guys are just starting out, though, obviously, if you're way down there, you're going to progressive work your way up, just like I was explaining how to do it earlier. It's the same premise. Um, Now, as far as the actual gear and enchants go, I recommend, so basically for Furious Gale, you don't want pal damage, right? Like what you're going to want, and more importantly, you want combo damage, okay? But you also want a combo damage Furious Gale, which is hard to come by. So you may end up having to kind of settle for whatever you can get at the time. Now, I just happen to have PAL damage because of global combo damage down there. I'm not as picky with it, but you obviously want to try and fight for those kind of stats. The main thing here is, you want to get crit damage in 2 of them. So that way you've got crit coming in, and then you want combo. So anything that will give you buffs, especially like, you'll notice like here you got combo damage resistance, counter damage resistance, and skill damage resistance are all going to be things you're going to want because these are the classes that are ultimately going to be the antithesis to you, okay? More than anything though, right, you want to basically look for those decent power plus stats in your enchants and then level them up accordingly. And that's just going to be kind of pick and choose. For the morph, you can pick up the Chaotic Warlord Hammer free to play just by saving your lucky coins and just basically run Lucky Spinner over and over until eventually you will run this in the Lucky Spinner and you just pick this up. And this works great because it's going to give you 30% AoE on basic attacks and combo. Now, if you're a little bit on the higher end of the pay to win, then you will probably pick up the Flaming Carnage because that's going to give you crits. Now, you could arguably grab like Skyward Blade, there's a lot of other choices here, okay? But the idea would be to basically, even Beast Roar Bow is probably by far the best piece because of what it has to offer in combo to counter and every other thing. But the big thing is crit rate with crit damage. Okay, but the basic gist is, like even if you hey, you acquire Under the Dome, right? This is a strictly PvE element, but it's noteworthy enough to mention. Okay, now as far as relics are concerned, all right, you don't want the Demon Mask. What you're going to want is either going to be crit rate or combo. This is dependent on whatever's lowest. So if you have more crit, you'll go for combo. If you have more combo, then then you'll go for crit. It's just going to be dependent on what you're low or gain on. So like here, I'm 66, I'm even Steven. Okay. Now, as far as the actual piece here, you can either go with Magic Box and give yourself your deer damage up, or you can go down and get a panda. I'll explain a little bit into this later, but the basic gist is going to be dependent on what kind of Plume Monarch you want to be. As far as the actual statues go, you can either use Time Statue if you want to use Dazzle and Disarm, or Smoke Bomb. And that's one angle that you can approach with it. Otherwise, you can go with Stellar and just give yourself a little bit of a bonus to your Worldly Snare. And as far as the actual Spirit Necklace versus, like, say, you could try wearing the Storm Necklace. I think Spirit Necklace works out a little better just because of the Blitz bonus. And as for whether you use Flame Book or any of these other books is going to be entirely dependent on, if you're out and about in PvP, Flame Book works pretty damn well. But you can just as easily run Stone Writ. There's not really an answer here per se, because it depends on the type of players you're up against. You know, if you're trying to damage down and try to do as much damage as possible, then the Flame Book's going to help that. But if you're wanting survivability, then the Stone Root Tome's going to be a better choice. In terms of the other 3 books, is going to be purely for the PvE side of the build. A lot of the time people will pick up Beast type book just for that 20% extra damage dealt. So again, you always want to kind of have that in mind. So you might want to build more than one set with that in mind. As far as the actual back accessory is concerned, okay, I think Alien Dimension might be one of the best because of the fact that it increases the attack speed, regen. You know, that's a big, big plus for a Plume Monarch. But, you know, you could also go with Virtual Connection, for example, and that's going to give you a bunch of drops on their resistance, which obviously that's going to build. You know, you could just as easily say if you got Celestial Surprises, okay, that's going to give you AoE bleed with basic attack every once in a while. I mean, the traditional answer has always been to grab basically the Emerald Embrace, which is going to give you combo damage. So you can get that one free to play, just coming out of the Lucky Spinner. The few that I mentioned earlier are purely pay to win and also time event specific. So chances are if you don't have it already, you're probably not going to see it anytime soon until the next pay to win event comes up. As far as the talents are concerned, okay, in my opinion, what you do is you grab your combo damage and you want to pick up the Gale Barrage and you want the combo healing. That just makes you a little tankier. And of course, then you can add some of that into health. You can put some of it into attack and just kind of build on that. As you can see, I've kind of tried to min-max my crit damage there as much as I can. Because again, the idea here is you're trying to basically make yourself a big, tanky, and quick damage dealing builder. So obviously if you can build up your base attack, awesome, but you know, just like anything, you don't really get a lot of options as far as that's concerned. And the souls, I basically like to run a lot of Blade Duo and a lot of Bloodstained Blade, and I don't go as heavy into Immortal Spirit or the Forgiving Horns as much. Now, that is not to say you should neglect it. Like, you'll benefit from having this up. It's just basically, if you can have more HP, you're going to live longer and deal more damage by living longer, but at the expense of damage. And so oftentimes what I'll see people do is they'll either go, you know, 20-30 on their Bloodstained Blade, and then they'll bring up this to 30 and bring this up to 30. You can even it out. There's not really a wrong answer there, because really what you're looking at or what you're going to pay attention to is your HP, attack, and defense bonuses. You want to try to get these up to 1,000 each, and then bring up that attack up to 14 plus if you can. As far as the actual main focus, though, you want to bring up your combo multiplier up like crazy. And, you know, if you can bring up crit damage, then awesome, but it's not going to be a huge emphasis here. As far as the pals are concerned, again, like I'd mentioned, the emphasis on using Panda here versus Deer was kind of the question mark. You know, is you have a choice here. You can either do that, or what you can do is you can throw Octo and give yourself a little bit more boost to the amount of combo that you're doing. That'll give you like 120 combo. The only explanation I can give you as to whether you should use Panda versus, let's say, Hydra Sprite is going to be dependent on, like, if you want to deal more damage quicker and faster and you're not worried about living, then Hydra Sprite's going to give you that ability to proc that active skill that you're using that much faster. You know, and so that's just going to be entirely dependent on what you have available to you. Otherwise, I mean, for most people, I would say that, you know, as far as the pals are concerned, you know, if not using Hydra Sprite is going to cater to your fancy, you may, you know, run Cowboy Cactus, for example, and give yourself some damage every 3 attacks. Because, again, you could also just as easily, like, say, settle for running Benny if you have them, you know, and you can run Eggplant as well. And, again, that emphasis will buff your crit rate up ever so slightly, and it'll bring your combo up. Plus, you'll do Launch, which, again, this is a really good combination. So, but I think what is almost undoubtedly the most must-have in a Plume Monarch build is to have Banana, the bird, and then arguably you could probably throw in the Deer, but you don't have to. For if you're really purely looking at damage, and not survivability, you can sacrifice the deer and throw in like octopus, for example, and it's going to do that much more. It's just oftentimes what often will happen to you in the build is you will eventually come to discover that you really need survivability. Now, that said, as far as skills go, these are the skills that I like to use. So I almost always use Speed Surge just for the attack speed bonus, and then I'll kick off stuns, damage resistance drops, blitz, and then I'll run Roadly Snare. I don't really worry too much about using like Clone Strike or using the Shroom Shields so much, because it's more if you were, if you're wanting to tank a lot of hits and stuff like that, then you're gonna want to probably turn around and kind of, if anything, you want to bring up your Immortal Spirit up to like 40, and that's basically sacrificing basically what you're doing in Blade Duo, or you could take it away from Blood Stained Blade, but I wouldn't. Like if I was gonna do it, I'd drop this down to like 30 and bring this up, bring your global HP up. And then what you can go do is go to your class awakening, and like you'll notice here, I dump almost all of it into global attack. But you can say, for example, like if you're really struggling and you don't have, like you're having a hard time tanking it, you can also dump some of it into, say the actual HP here and do it an inverse of what I did. The reason I dump so much into the attack seal though is just because of what you gain from it. I mean, again, you can kind of, suffice to say, you can even this out. I can show you what I mean. Like, so, like, for example, I can go up to about 26. Notice the cost goes up as you level up. So you can even this out, and there's not going to be, like, a whole lot of loss there. Like, even that out, and you've given yourself, 129% into combo, 41% rather than 20% into global attack. Like, it's not gonna gut your account. If anything, like you can change that out as many times as you want and adjust it as needed. You don't need to worry about whether that's going to be good or bad in terms of what it does for the build. It's just kind of a question of whether you're, what are you lacking you may need more of. Like you can see my combo multiplier there is not super tanky right now. So like if I just go and reset, and let's say we just ignore doing that, let's say we bring up our crit damage, we bring up combo up a ways, and say like, I don't know, we could go up that way with it, bring this up to like 201, and then go and, give ourselves a little bit of attack, right? And not even worry about the other two stats. We'll see that our combo multiplier is now at 24k, at the expense of 200 to 300% and attack bonus, which mind you is universal across the board. So that's part of the reason why you'll see I don't really focus so much on the combo multiplier here, because it's not as important. But you'll see your crit damage is going to go up 200 or 300% too. Like I don't know, like if anything, you could probably just do this. If anything, like I would bring this up. Wrong one. Bring this up to like 30. Oh god damn it. Don't care. Bring that up to 31 and bring this up to 31, or get it damn well near that point. And now you focus in on two particular stats, and you're not going to worry about crit damage as much, but you've now got your combo up quite a bit, plus you haven't sacrificed as much in your attack bonus. Either way, statue's pretty straightforward. You just go all combo damage. You just basically adjust the combos that way. As far as mounts go, I mean, there's a lot of different choices here, but I mean, little to most people's imagination. It's not like, again, I would say a lot of people pick up the koi paper kite simply because it's giving you more AoE. So if anything, that's a really good free-to-play option. I've seen just as many people run adaptive slime and go for the tinkiness that a lot of people are after. Because again, you got to have something that gives you a shield more often than not, because a lot of the players that are dealing with warriors need something to mitigate the counters that they're throwing them at. And that could either be in the form of stuns, or it can be in the form of shields. It's just however you decide to angle it, it's going to be entirely up to you in your Plume Monarch build, And so, like here, if I just make a small adjustment to, say, the Flaming Carnage, right? And then say we just jump in and, I don't know, let's see if I've got, I can probably, hang on, I got to do this too. Always want to make sure you're buying fertilizer, FYI. You don't want to be that guy that doesn't do that. Otherwise, you're really kind of hurting yourself. But yeah, you want to go into blazing. See, I can't even do that either. Dang. All right. Well, I mean, I could show you the damage output, but like the basic gist is that's effectively what you want in a Plume Monarch build. And again, you can adjust skills as needed. You don't necessarily have to stick to like a stun version of this. I mean, you can just as easily throw in like 100 slashes in place of like, say, smoke bomb, and give yourself a little bit more tankiness there. I mean, I've seen just as many people take away like speed surge in return for something that, like, for example, let's say instead of having speed surge, I've seen a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll run clone strike. And that works fine if you're wanting to kind of delay it. But again, in PvP, it's not as useful. And I'll show you why. Because, again, the biggest issue in PvP is a lot of the people that are in the meta right now are basically running like profit builds. And profit builds, they just do a stupid amount of damage. And then they pop shields at the same time because of their active skill. So almost nobody can negate it. You have to almost have a stupid amount of skill resistance to be able to really put up a fight with them. And, you can get lucky and stun them, but that's, they're the master of stuns, so it doesn't really work that way either. And so you're left kind of screwed one way or the other way, right? But like even against other Plume Monarchs, something that you'll see here is, like a common problem that you'll run into here is like this, where you run into somebody that's basically, even though his build is technically better than what I just ran, because again, I can get away with it because I'm basically running a goddamn Cheetah Zero, which just breaks the goddamn game. But you can see he's got like a tortoise in there for that shield, he's got an octopus, and then he's got the bird and a couple of other things. Like if I was to say, if I go into my pals right now and say like I went a little bit heavy on crit rate, right? But let's say if I just swap that out, instead of crit rate, let's go for combo. Okay, same premise, same everything, but now we're going to buff our average combo up. The other thing too is I can even show you the difference in terms of how they're set up. Because again, this is a combo crit build. It's not so much an emphasis on one or the other. It's trying to take advantage of both. And that's part of the reason why I think it works well in a Plume Monarch build, because you're basically playing off of not one, but two different stats that you can, pile on top of, and there's not really a bad options, so to speak, there, right? But if we look at his build, for example, okay, you'll notice that my final HP and attack and defense, well, my defense is lower, but marginally, but you can see my attack speed's going to be higher. His combo is at 90% though, where I've evened out my crit and combo. He's gone all into combo. So, that is to say that if you looked at his gear, chances are it's probably primarily combo rather than crit. And so, and obviously, I think having a lot of combo is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because you can see his crit rate's going to be higher. The combo multiplayer doesn't even compare to mine. I mean, I even have a better combo multiplayer than he does. Like, if I was to just swap my crit gear in favor of maybe more combo, I'd actually probably see a significant friggin' jump. Because that's just how much of a difference that actually makes. And that's where a lot of that, tweaking can be adjusted. It's like, if anything, if you find that, okay, I'm doing even Steven with my stats, you can always adjust it, if you need to. So like, hey, I wasn't working so well, let's throw combo on top. And now, hey, we're doing 57, 77 on combo. We could easily take away one of these crit pieces that I've got. Because again, I've got a majority of the 4 pieces I have, I've got at least, I think 6 pieces of crit rate. It may be better to just take 2 of those pieces away and go for, instead of a 6-piece crit set, go for a 6-piece combo set. And same exact logic applies. Just give yourself that extra amount of combo, that way you're firing off your combos. But that's ultimately kind of the idea. Now, as far as the Avian's concerned, Sunshine Bringer is a given. Like, you should absolutely have this. You want to grab Shroom Combo if you can get it, Super League if you can get it. Against the Strong's a plus against bosses. I like using self-defense just for the basic attack and defense. But honestly, you could really benefit from, like, gaining anything that's going to counteract anybody that's, so like crit resistance. Like, for example, you can see I've been trying to build off of a lot of different playstyles, because you can build off of a lot of different things with these avians now in the game, and you can really get quite a lot of creative solutions to different problems. But like, rage bonus would be like a nice one, I think. If you can get it into your avian, that is. But you can also go for grudge holder if you're wanting to counteract against other plume monarchs. But if anything, quick but dull might be handy. Something else that you might even pick up on is in the purples that you will see if I can find it. I think I've got one, or at least I did. I did at one time, but the idea would be is to basically try and tackle something that has the where it'll give you like a percentage bonus of that combo up and increase after a set number of times. Like, all that would be incredibly helpful as far as a combo set build is concerned. But overall, that's really, as far as making a Plume Monarch is concerned, that's really kind of what I run. And again, using like Clone Strike, not using Clone Strike, I think Clone Strike's not going to be that helpful. I mean, even in PvP and in PvE, it just doesn't tend to be as, like, I'd almost rather have Shroom Shield. But if anything, like in PvP, you tend to find needing either easy breezy, or you'll want to run like, like for example, I could throw in Disarm here. And so, like I was saying earlier, you have this choice of using the Stellar Statue, but you may find that, I need the Time Statue instead. And, notice how I got rid of the Octo, and, that's another thing we can take out is instead of Arrow Bamboo, go for the Magic Box. You can also go with Metamorphic, but I prefer Magic Box, at least in this particular build. And go run something like this. But like, if I was to go and do bosses now, if I was, go tweak in that direction, then all really you got to do is, now, of course, there are some other options in this. Like, okay, so like in the talent tree, for example, you can go down this pathway, and this works fine if you're just wanting to drill them down. But, again, one of the things that I think is kind of fun is if, like, let's say you go down the Fury path, you can, build like a Plume Monarch with regen in mind, and work on your regeneration and basically make it tankier. This is a really like very damage focused version of a Plume Monarch, but you can just as easily, maybe not focus so much on the damage element of a Plume Monarch, but take it back a bit, make it tankier, give it a high regen, and bring up your regen stat and wear like a regen set gear. So like, for example, you can take out like this set, for example, and I can throw on my regen set. Okay. And then, instead of, so like, if I was going to do a regen version of this, I mean, really about all I would do is probably take the deer out, throw the panda in, and then I would go back in here, take this out, put that back on, and then I would rehash, like I was saying, I'd rehash this and bring this down to like 30, probably 30, and then let's bring this all the way up, like bring this up to like 40, 45, 50, as high as we can go. And I wouldn't even bother with well, I might just leave it just because even with that little change, even though our global attack's been adjusted ever so slightly, something else we can do is we can go into Class Awakening, and we can probably leave this alone, honestly. I don't know if we'll necessarily need it. We can just use whatever we've got spare in the HP. And in talents, we'll just go ahead and wipe this out. And we'll go over here, and we'll want to pick up... let's see, where is that? We're looking for it. I know it's in here somewhere. I think it's regen. I think it is. Don't quote me on this, but I think it is. And then we would want to grab probably this side and grab Galbarage. And I think, if I remember right, because the idea behind this is you give yourself a bunch of skill resistance, and then you want to go and grab, I think you want this. You want to try and make yourself as tanky as you can, basically. Then bring up your combo if you can. We'll just spend what left we have over there. And we'll go over here and do the rest on defense, I think. But, okay, with that little tweak, you see how it's brought my health up quite a bit. But with something like that, what that does for you is, yeah, obviously the biggest problem is I have almost no combo is the only issue. And so, like, a regen set works great if you've got regen combo. Because that's what I would do differently. Is you don't focus on crit anymore. You just buff your regeneration stat a bunch, and then you bring up your combo up a bunch. But then what it does is it makes you into this really cool quasi tank type build. So like, for example, if I was to just, you know, go back from, you know, using a flaming carnage now, and let's say we go use the warlord's hammer, I don't really need to adjust the avian any because there's not really any reason to. But I would just make sure to, I don't even think you need to adjust that, but the only thing you probably would adjust is the, not what I want, get the flame book out, put this on for whenever you're fighting bosses, and then just kick it on and you'll see what I mean. Because it makes you a lot tankier at the expense that you don't do as much damage. That's like maybe the only downside to it, really. And I mean, part of the reason why I'm using that set in the first place is just because it just has a higher amount. Because you can see I just don't have as much. It's one of those things where it can work, but you have to devote so much to it that you lose a lot out on it at the same time. But it can be done, and you can basically make your plume live longer and you deal more damage over time. It's handy whenever you're like in the middle of, like, say, lava boss, or, you know, if you're going against, like, you know, if you're going into the grumpy, you know, that's where it comes in handy, like, because you basically give yourself an ability to live longer. And then what you can do is you would probably want to take these off for disarm and so on, and you would want to run, like, probably, you know, Nature's Renewal, Shroom Shield would be the two I would use. And that's the build for PvE that I run. So, like, you can kind of see what I mean by, like, you know, between PvE and PvP, there's a little bit of a chain of difference. Because in PvP, you're trying to drill down and kill them as quickly as you can. In PvE, you're trying to live as long as possible. Hopefully that made sense, but thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Oh, and also make sure to watch this part of the video if you want to save some money.